Hello. In this short lesson, I'm going to be going over some techniques I use to get a nice polish on my hard surface models. Basically, I started with a sphere and used brushes mainly like the H polish brush, which allows you to get these nice hard surfaces and edges, as you can see. And maybe you use the pinch brush to make the edges even sharper. And you can get pretty clean results this way, but this technique I'm going to show you will take it to the next level. It will really make it look super clean with a minimal number of steps. So let's get started. So this technique involves actually creating polygroups on the model and polishing those with a feature called the polish in the deformation tab. So right now, if I click on my polyline and fill, you can see that this is just all one polygroup. Polygroups will be defined as different colors of polygons. And we're going to be utilizing a plugin called Polygroup It. It's in the Z plugins command menu, and it's going to be Polygroup It from Paint. So we're going to actually be painting outlines, black outlines around the areas that we want different polygroups to be created. So to get started, I'm going to select my standard brush. I'm going to turn off Z-Add and just make it RGB. I'm also going to just solo out my helmet there. And I'm going to go up to my color panel, make sure I'm on white, and I'm just going to click Fill Object. So that filled it with the white color, which doesn't look like it did anything, but it's actually white now. We could have picked another color and it would have been that color, like red or blue, but we actually want it to be white. And so the next step, I'm going to modify this brush a little. I'm going to go down to the stroke panel, and you can see there's lazy mouse is turned on, and I do want that on. I'm going to turn off the lazy steps, turn them way down, and I'm going to turn up the lazy radius, which will help us give us a nice steady stroke. So for now, maybe I'll try at 50. The lazy steps actually creates, if that's up high enough, it'll actually make your strokes look like dots. So I do not want that. So I'm going to now go down to the color panel and make this an absolute black color. We definitely want it to be black. And so now I'm going to be tracing along these borders, these hard edges of my model. I'm going to want to create these enclosed areas, and each one will be its own separate polygroup. So just my brush size. Your brush size doesn't have to be super fine unless you're really trying to get in a tight area. And just let me begin my stroke. And you can see with the lazy mouse on, the steady stroke, it really helps create a nice clean drawing line. And you can turn it up even more if you want an even smoother stroke. If you're finding your stroke a little wavy, it'll give you that longer red trail that you can see. And it really makes for a nice, clean, steady stroke, which is what it was made for. So we don't want any spaces between these borders. Otherwise, it's kind of like using the fill bucket command in a program like Photoshop. If you don't have a completely enclosed area, it'll leak out everywhere else. So I'm just going to quickly, as I can, go around. And you'll see this technique Actually is quicker than if you were manually trying to use like the polish brush. I'm going to take it all the way, make sure it all connects. Let me just fill in this area. I'm also going to connect up these edges here because I want that to be a separate poly group. Now to the front. And I'm also going to trace this outline edge. It's a little more of a subtle one, but it'll come out nicely with this technique. Let's see if I can get this in one stroke. Almost. And under the visor here. And lastly, I'm going to create a little line that helps define this area. So a good way to check your model to see if it's completely enclosed is I'm going to switch to a flat color. I'm going to change my color back to white, and we can check out the model, make sure there's no gaps in our lines. All right, looking good. So right now, this model has multiple subdivision levels. As you can see, I go down. So I'm going to be working on a model with no subdivision levels from here on out. So I want to duplicate this model. So I'm just going to click the duplicate button. And on this one, I am going to delete the lower subdivision levels. So I'm going to go down to my geometry tab. I'm going to click delete lower, because this poly group, it only works on one level of subdivision. So I'm going to turn on my poly lines. And if you don't want to see the wireframe, you just click on the word line and it'll get rid of it. Now we'll just see our poly groups. So I'm going to dock my Z plugins. I'm going to go over to poly group it from Paint and click on that, and let's see what it gives us. And there we have it. So we can see now, if you can't see it already with the various colors, if you do Control-Shift-Click, you'll get highlight your separate poly groups. And this will come in handy later as well. But before I do that, I'm going to go to my Geometry tab. I'm going to click on Mirror and Weld, just so it's symmetrical on both sides in regards to the poly groups. That'll just help me later in editing if I'm using these poly groups. Okay, so let's go down. I'm going to turn off the poly paint. I'm going to go down to the poly paint tab and just click off colorize. Make sure I'm at my white color. So now let's go up to the deformation tab, and we're going to be using the polish by groups. So what that's going to do is perform kind of a smoothing, polishing routine on all these separate poly groups. It'll treat them distinctly. So if you notice to the right of it, there's a circle, and the circle can either be solid or open. If it's solid, it's not going to change the overall silhouette of your model. It'll be a more subtle polish. And if it's open, it'll perform a more aggressive polishing where it actually will slightly change the silhouette or total shape of your model. I'm not too concerned about that at this stage because I can always bring back if any subtleties are lost in the shape. So let's see what it gives us. I'm just going to maybe slide it halfway, and you can see it's already much cleaner. So hopefully if we go back to the original, let me turn off the poly paint on this one and go back to the one we just did, you can see it's much cleaner. But we could take it even further. You can see it's still a little wobbly in some areas, so what we can do is, I'll bring up my H polish. I'm going to Control-Shift-Click on this area, which is its own poly group. And then I can use the H polish brush to really smooth that out or get it sharper or cleaner, or whatever you're looking for. I could do that here as well. And then we can perform another polish by groups, and it'll clean it up even more. So you can go around your model and see if there's any areas you want to clean up individually. Another technique, if you don't want to click and hide, is the poly groups. Is if you go down to your brush panel, open up auto masking and slide up mask by poly groups to 100. And what this does is it'll respect each poly group as you paint, meaning it's almost like it's acting like a masking. And if I start with my H polish, it will not bleed over into the next poly group. So that's another way of cleaning up your model without having to hide it. You could just polish it and it's not affecting the other edges. And at this stage, if you can do the more subtle polish by making that a closed circle, just dragging that up a few times. It'll be very subtle. So again, hopefully you can see the advantage of this. If we go back again to the original, and we go down to this one, how much cleaner it is and how quicker that is to get it to that stage. Now you can take this, apply this to your model that has multiple subdivision levels. Like I said, this one, I could go back down, you could see the subdivision levels. So what I'm going to do is do a project. So again, that's in the subtool panel. We go to project, and it'll project onto whatever is visible, whatever subtools are visible. Even if you have it soloed out down here, if there's a little eyeball icon over it, it'll project onto it. So this is the polished one that has no subdivision levels. This is the one that's unpolished and does have subdivision levels. So I'm just going to go down to my lowest, do project all, step up a subdivision level, project all, step up a subdivision level, project all, and do it one more time. And there we have it. So now my one with multiple subdivision levels also has the polished surfaces that we got by using this technique. Another advantage of using these poly groups in conjunction with our brush mask by poly group settings is you can give your model additional forms and details with very little effort. Because I have these poly groups, I'm using the move brush. As soon as I touch down on the model, you can see it's only affecting that poly group. And there I've just given my model a little more definition and forms. You can notice there is a bit of stretching there, so here's a technique to get around that. I'm going to go up to these polygroups here, turn them on just to show you. I'm going to control click highlight on them, and go down to my geometry tab, and there's an edge loop panel. So I'm just going to click on edge loop, and it works on just whatever's visible in this case. I'm going to click on edge loop. It doesn't look like much has happened, but if I zoom way in, you can see it gave me, you can see it's in a different color, a loop of polygons around that initial polygroup. So now, if I use my move brush with the mask my polygroups, it'll give me a bit of a cleaner result because it has that extra loop of polygons around it. So here I'm creating some extra subtle forms on the model. So you can still go back down to your deformation tab and mask by polish by groups. I'm going to turn that to solid, so it's not going to do as aggressive a smoothing on it, and that might help get rid of some of these jaggeds. So if I turn it up, you can see it cleaned it up pretty nicely. Did an okay job there, but it did a better job on the area that had the edge loop around it. So there you have it, some techniques for getting really nice clean surfaces on your hard surface models. Thank you very much for listening. Please comment if you have anything to say or have any questions, and I'll see you next time.